Hi guys! Hope you're all okay at home, and I thought that today would be a good day to film chapter 4 of our book that I'm reading to you, Welcome to Nowhere by Elizabeth Laird, published by Macmillan Publishing, so I will just get straight into it. Baba was right about one thing. There was hardly any space in Granny's flat in Durrah. It may have had more rooms than our flat in Bosra, but they were all crammed with furniture. It was on the first floor of an old block of flats with a balcony on the front, but even that was stuffed with hundreds of dusty old plants. It was obvious that Granny wasn't pleased to see us. She seemed to really miss Auntie Majda, who was her youngest daughter, and who had been under her mother's thumb for years. Auntie Majda's children were all little girls, and they were quiet and shy. Now Granny's flat was filled with 3 big teenagers, Iman, Musa and me, not to mention Fuad, who although he was only 5 could make more noise than the police siren, and Nadia, who was toddling around and into everything. Granny couldn't bear the sight of Musa. There have never been any deformed children on our side of the family, I heard her say to Baba, looking accusingly at Ma. Nadia was the only one of us that Granny seemed to like. She kept taking her away from Ma and stuffing her with food. It was obvious from the beginning that Granny couldn't stand Ma, and Ma couldn't stand Granny. It was horrible being around them both, especially when Ma was trying to cook something in Granny's kitchen. Granny would sit cross-legged on the window seat and say things like, "Goodness, Layla, do you always put so much cinnamon in your stews?" Or, "What a pity you've chipped that dish, it was such a favourite of mine." Then when Ma served up the food, Granny would push it around on her plate and say, "Of course, Majda is an excellent cook. I taught her myself." Ma never said a word, but her mouth set in a thin, straight line, and it wasn't only inside the flat where war had broken out. Things were getting serious in the world outside as well. Ever since people had heard about how the schoolboy slogan writers had been tortured in prison, there seemed to be a march or a protest every day. It was scary but exciting too. People seemed to have lost their fear. The military police were using water cannons and beating up everyone they caught. People were being arrested, tortured and shot. But it didn't stop the people of Durrah. They just went on demonstrating. I couldn't really follow what was going on. I didn't want to get involved anyway. Being political was not part of my life plan. If you want to be a businessman and get rich quick, getting up the nose of the government isn't a great way to begin. A few days after we moved to Durrah, Musa and I had to start at our new school. I had a sick feeling in my stomach just thinking about it. "You don't have to wait for me," Musa said as we walked the short distance to school on that first day. I could tell from his voice that he was as scared as I was. "Yes, I do," I said grimly. "What sort of brother do you think I am?" "A stupid one," he said with a shaky smile. It started off as badly as we'd expected. A bunch of 10-year-olds saw Musa, hooted with laughter, and began to walk alongside him, imitating the way he limped and making monkey noises. I felt the old familiar thump of fear and anger, but I knew it would only make matters worse to lose my temper. So I turned around and said, "I bet none of you knows how many miles there are between the Earth and the Moon. This guy does. He's a genius." It was a bit feeble, but it was the best I could do on the spur of the moment. 1 or 2 looked puzzled and a bit impressed. Then the biggest one said, "He's not a genius. He's a cripple. He's weird." "Weird yourself," I said with a shrug. My brain was working overtime, trying to think of another cool thing to say, when the most extraordinary thing happened. All around the entrance to the school building, groups of boys were standing, talking to each other. Then the tallest ones called out, "Hey, is that you, Musa?" and strode over. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the flock of irritating kids nudge each other, eyeing the tall boy with respect. "Hi, I'm Bassem," he said. "My cousin in Bosra told me you were coming. He says you're one of us. Come and meet the others." And then, I couldn't believe it, he linked arms with Musa and practically dragged him off to join the group of senior boys who were standing closest to the door. And did Musa say, "Nice to meet you, Bassem, and this is my brother Omar, who's a really cool guy"? He did not. He left me stranded in the courtyard, surrounded by infuriating, cheeky kids. "That Musa, is he your friend then?" one of them asked. "What's wrong with his legs?" "He's my brother. He's got cerebral palsy," I said shortly. "He can't help walking like that." "We didn't mean anything," one of them said anxiously. "We didn't know he was Bassem's friend." There was awe in his voice when he said Bassem. Typical Musa, I thought bitterly. Day one in this snake pit, and he goes and makes friends with the most important guy in the school and leaves me with all the losers. I hunched my shoulders, put my head down and marched towards the entrance. I'd just have to get on with things, find the school office and go to whichever class they'd assigned me. That first day was better in some ways than I'd expected, and worse in others. It was better because I didn't get stuck with the crippled's brother label, but worse because the bad report from my old school meant that I was put in a class with all the hard nuts. I spent most of the day doing calculations about how many days, hours and minutes I'd have to spend in this dump before I could walk out of school forever and start my real life with Rasul. He was still in Bosra. I was desperate to see him, actually. I wanted to hear him say it again, that he'd make me his business partner once he was settled in Europe. If I couldn't keep that dream alive, I felt I'd shrivel up and die inside. I wanted to get out of school as fast as possible when the last dreary lesson finished, but when I reached down to get my bag, one of the other boys snatched it away. "Come and get it, Bosra bumface," he said with a laugh. I lunged for it, but he'd already kicked it to someone else. The 5 or 6 boys still in the classroom were watching me with that cruel eagerness I'd seen so often in the faces of Moose's tormentors. They were just looking for an excuse to attack me, hoping I'd make an idiot of myself. My heart was thumping, but I managed to put on a bored expression, then settled back in my chair, crossed my arms, I pretended to yawn, and said, "Suit yourselves, guys, I've got all day." And I waited. They soon got fed up, but then the biggest one, Farid, had the bright idea of lobbing my bag at the window. I saw what he was going to do just in time. In a flash, the consequences unrolled like a film in my mind. The smashed window, my bag lying in the school courtyard in the scatter of broken glass, the accusations, the blame, the punishment. A superhuman surge ran through me. As my bag sailed towards the window, I leapt from my chair like a cheetah springing after its prey and caught the bag just before it hit the glass. Then I crashed down onto the table, half winding myself in the process. "Wow, good save," one of the boys said. "Nice one, Omar," said another. I felt as if I'd passed some kind of test. I tried to smile, but it was hard with the breath knocked out of me. I made for the door, but I'd relaxed too soon. Farid was blocking my way. "Think you're clever, don't you, bumface?" he said, aiming a kick at my shins. "See you tomorrow, I'm looking forward to it already." Musa was already at the school gate with 2 of the boys who'd been with Bassem that morning, a grin splitting his face in half. The other boys moved off when they saw me coming, and I heard one of them say, "Think he'll do it? Bassem seems sure, but I can't say I'm impressed." "Nor me," said the other one. "I can hardly understand a word he says." I wasn't in the mood to listen to Musa raving on about his new friends, and I'd have left him to go home alone if it hadn't been for the thought of Ma. She'd skin me alive if I arrived back without him. I was meant to be his protection. It would never have crossed her mind that the one needing protection was me. "How did it go then?" asked Musa, breaking the silence. "Wonderful. Never had a better day in my life," I said bitterly. "Bullies?" I said nothing. There was an empty drinks can lying on the pavement. I kicked out at it savagely. "I'm really sorry, Omar," he said, and I was sure I detected a note of triumph under his sympathy. "Look, I'll tell Bassem. I'm sure he—" I gritted my teeth. "I'll fight my own battles, thank you very much." The words hung in the air. Things were the wrong way around. I hated the thought of Musa patronising me. Is that what I do? Patronise him, I thought, with a flash of understanding. The idea was unsettling. I pushed it away. "I heard what those guys were saying just now," I told him accusingly. "What did they mean, think he'll do it?" "I can't tell you." He sounded revoltingly smug. "The fewer people who know about it, the better." "That's fine by me," I said with a shrug. "Keep your little secret. I don't care." Musa made a sort of gurgling noise like he does when he's thrilled about something. I had to turn and look at him. His eyes were alive with excitement. "Look, I would tell you, but it's grown-up stuff. I don't want to get you into trouble." I was really offended now. "So I'm just a silly kid, am I?" I walked a little faster, enjoying the fact he was struggling to keep up with me. "Listen, Omar, it's dangerous, that's all." I was burning with curiosity now. "What's dangerous? What have you got yourself into?" He was struggling with himself, I could see. At last, he said, "All right, I'll tell you, but you've got to swear." I rolled my eyes. "Not that again. Last time, everyone in the whole world knew the secret anyway." This is different. The grin had dropped off his face. All right, I swear, and before you ask, I mean it. He paused as if he didn't know where to start. Then he looked over his shoulder, as if he was afraid that someone had crept up behind him. Revolution, he said, so quietly that I thought I hadn't heard him right. What? He pushed his face closer to mine. Revolution, he hissed. All right, no need to spit, I heard. Then I took in what he'd said. We'd slowed to a halt. I stared at him. I almost wanted to laugh. Musa, my skinny brother, shaky on his legs, his tongue stuck in his mouth. Musa was the most unlikely revolutionary I could possibly have imagined. Are you kidding? Was all I managed to say. Since when have you known a single thing about politics or... His face was serious now. He was watching me, as if he was trying to gauge my reaction. It was those geek friends of yours in Bosra, wasn't it? I said slowly. Everyone thought you were spending your time swapping nerdy facts about sharks or something, while in fact... My voice tailed off. Ismail's father has a very powerful computer, Musa went on, and an unusually good broadband connection. He lets Ismail use it in the afternoons. Who's going to suspect us of doing anything wrong? 2 nerds and a cripple. We've been researching what our dear government has been up to. It's disgusting, Omar. Arrests, disappearances, torture, and that's only half of it. They've got to be stopped. All we want is a proper democratic government. Freedom of speech, freedom from torture, an end to corruption. Are you crazy? I burst out. Don't you know what they do to people like you? Haven't you heard Baba say again and again? Baba works for the government. There was a hardness in Musa's voice I'd never heard before. He's compromised, and when the government falls, he'll be the one in trouble, not me. I stared at him. I didn't know where to begin. How does Bassem fit into all of this? I asked at last. He grinned. We've been feeding him information, stuff he needs for the things he's writing. You know those boys who kicked all the unrest off a couple of weeks ago? The idiots who sprayed the people want the regime to change all over the school walls, I interrupted cuttingly. The ones they caught and tortured. He ignored me. They were friends of Bassem's. All the marches and demonstrations, who do you think is organising them? Schoolboys, kids, us. We'll bring this rotten government down, Omar. There's a part for me to play and I'm not going to be left out. He sounded as if he was spouting something he'd read in a book or seen in a cheesy film. You're mad, I said, chills running up and down my spine. You've got to be mad. He grabbed my arm and shook it. Don't you care about your country, Omar? Do you like living under a dictatorship? He was really annoying me now. I shook his hand off my arm. Stop it. You know I'm not interested in all that stuff. It's just politics. Politics? Politics is life, he said passionately. I lost patience completely. Shut up, Musa. Just shut up. You're going to get arrested and then they'll kill you and Baba will lose his job and we'll all be in the gutter. If I had any sense, I'd tell Baba and get him to lock you up. I enjoyed the alarm flaring in his eyes. You wouldn't. You promised. There are circumstances which override mere promises, I said, trying to sound dignified, when it's a matter of life or death. I knew I sounded silly, but luckily we'd arrived back at the flat. Ma was standing for us in the doorway. Well, she said anxiously, how did it go? It was okay, we both said at the same time, and we pushed past her into the flat. And that's the end of chapter 4. So, what do you think about Omar's brother getting involved in all these demonstrations and protests? What do you think might happen next? You can let me know on Purple Mash, email me or comment on the blog, and make sure you come back for chapter 5.